Sunday night, November 2022. Lyle is in his living room in Akron, Ohio, watching the Browns game. Bad game as usual. He doesn't mind. It's the ritual. Same recliner, same beer, same crocheted blanket draped over the back that his wife made in 2012. The phone rings. It's his oldest son, Jeff. 38 years old, financial analyst in Columbus. The kind of person who texts charts, who subscribes to 3 market newsletters, who reads quarterly reports over breakfast. Dad, I need to ask you something. Your portfolio, is it still 75-25, VTSAX and VBTLX? Lyle mutes the game. It is, just like the book says. Dad, did you see what happened to VBTLX this year? It dipped a little, I know. But bonds always come back. The book Explo, 13%, Dad. VBTLX dropped 13%. Maximum drawdown of almost 19, and stocks fell at the same time. Both sides went down together. Silence. Lyle looks at the shelf behind the television. The book is there. The Simple Path to Wealth. Spine worn down, pencil marks from 14 years of rereading. He followed every instruction. 2 funds, no advisor, no panic, no deviation. 31 years as a plant supervisor at a packaging factory, and every cent invested exactly the way J.L. Collins said. Portfolio of $720,000 when he retired 8 months ago. Dad, on a $1 million portfolio in your allocation, that's $179,000 from both sides at the same time. Lyle doesn't answer. The game plays on without sound. The beer warms on the table. Jeff continues, I went looking in the book, the chapter on bonds, the part that explains what to do when both sides fall together. And? It doesn't exist, Dad. That part isn't there. This book has 3 seams that only tear open after you stop working. The first one surprised me. The second one worried me. But the third is why Lyle had to rewrite his own retirement by hand. And the numbers of what he lost before he figured it out will make you uncomfortable. But before I show you where the seams are, let me tell you why this book earned the right to be taken this seriously in the first place. J.L. Collins did not write The Simple Path to Wealth to sell you anything. He wrote it as a series of letters to his teenage daughter because he realized that if something happened to him, she would have no idea how to handle money. Those letters became a blog. The blog became the most shared investing resource in the entire financial independence community. And the book became something close to scripture for an entire generation of people who wanted wealth without complexity. The core idea is disarmingly simple. Buy one fund VTSAX, the Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund. Keep your costs low. Don't try to pick stocks. Don't try to time the market. Don't hire an advisor charging 1% of your assets to do what an index fund does better. Just stay the course. And here's the thing, he's right. The SPIVA scorecard, published every year, shows that over any 20-year period, more than 90% of actively managed funds lose to the index. 90%. That means the vast majority of professionals, people with Bloomberg terminals and Wharton degrees and research teams, cannot beat the strategy that Collins teaches in a 200-page book written for a teenager. During the accumulation phase, the 20 or 30 years when you're putting money in this strategy is nearly bulletproof. Market drops, you're buying cheaper. Volatility, that's a discount. Time is on your side. And the simplicity of the system eliminates the behavioral mistakes that destroy most portfolios. No panic selling, no chasing hot stocks, no switching strategies every time the news gets loud. Collins himself made the classic mistake during the 2008 crash. He sold near the bottom. He has admitted this publicly, openly, without excuses. And that experience became the foundation of his strongest argument that the enemy of a good portfolio is not the market, it is you. Your fear, your impatience. Your need to do something when doing nothing is the correct answer. He built his entire system to protect you from yourself, and for accumulation, it works. Think of this book as a map. And for the territory of accumulation, the long stretch where you're adding money, building, compounding it, is the best map that exists. Simple, precise, battle-tested. Lyle followed this map for 14 years, and it took him from almost nothing after the 2008 crash to $720,000 by the time he retired. But after you retire, the territory changes, and the map was never updated. That is not the same thing as saying the map is wrong. It is not wrong. Criticizing this book is not attacking index investing. It is not defending advisors who charge 2% to underperform. It is saying that the map covers one half of the terrain brilliantly, and the other half has 3 points where the ground no longer matches what's drawn. If you're within 10 years of retirement and your portfolio follows Collins, this channel was built for exactly this conversation. Hit subscribe now because what I'm about to show you is the part nobody talks about. Here's the first seam, and this is the one that surprised me. Fracture 1, the shield that fell with the sword. Collins tells you to put 75% of your portfolio in stocks and 25% in bonds once you reach retirement. The stock side goes into VTSAX. The bond side goes into VBTLX, the Vanguard Total Bond Market Index Fund. The logic is clean. Stocks are your engine, bonds are your shield. When stocks drop, bonds hold steady or go up. Your portfolio absorbs the hit. You sleep at night. That is how it's supposed to work. In 2022, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates at the most aggressive pace in decades, and something happened that the book never prepares you for. Bonds fell at the same time as stocks. VBTLX lost 13% that year. The maximum drawdown hit 18.8% in October. The shield didn't just fail to protect the portfolio, it bled alongside it, both sides down simultaneously. Now, why did this happen? There's a concept called duration risk, and it is the single most important word missing from Collins' entire book. Duration measures how sensitive a bond fund is to changes in interest rates. The higher the duration, the harder the fund falls when rates go up. VBTLX has an average duration of about 6 years. That means for every 1% increase in interest rates, the fund drops roughly 6% in market value. In 2022, rates went up fast and hard, and VBTLX, the fund that was supposed to be the safe side, the sleeping at night side, got hammered. Collins never explains this. The word duration does not appear in the book, not once. Think about the map again. The map shows a river where you can drink. You get there, and the river has dried up. The map wasn't wrong when it was drawn, but the terrain changed, and nobody redrew the map. That is exactly what Jeff saw in the numbers that night when he called his father. The shield fell with the sword. And here's the part that still sits with me. As of 2026, VBTLX has still not fully recovered from that drawdown. The fund that was supposed to protect retirees is still underwater from an event that happened 4 years ago. But the bond fund breaking was the visible damage. Underneath it, there is a math problem the book never addresses, and this is the one that worried me. Fracture 2, same allocation, 2 different realities. 75-25. That number appears throughout the book. It is the recommended allocation for retirement. And on paper, it looks the same whether you're 35 or 63. It is not the same. During accumulation, a market crash is an opportunity. Stocks drop 30%, you keep investing. You buy more shares at lower prices. Dollar cost averaging, buying the same dollar amount every month regardless of price, turns volatility into your greatest advantage. The market recovers, your cheaper shares ride up, and you come out ahead. Collins explains this beautifully. He is absolutely right. But here is what changes after retirement. You are no longer adding money, you are removing it. A 30% drop plus a withdrawal equals a permanent loss of shares. Those shares are gone. They never recover. They never ride back up. They were sold at the bottom, and they disappeared from your portfolio forever. This is called sequence of returns risk. It means the order of your returns, not the average, determines whether your portfolio survives. 2 retirees with identical portfolios, identical withdrawal rates, and identical average returns over 20 years can end up in completely different places, one comfortable, one broke, based solely on whether the bad years came first or last. A bad first few years of retirement can destroy a portfolio that would have been perfectly fine if those same bad years had happened a decade later. Collins never uses this term. He never explains this mechanic. And for someone still accumulating, he doesn't need to, because sequence risk doesn't apply when you're adding money. But for someone already withdrawing, it is the single most important risk in retirement investing. And the book is silent on it. Here is what that looked like for Lyle. His portfolio of $720,000 dropped roughly 18% in 2022. That brought it down to about $590,000. But he still needed to live. He withdrew $36,000 that year, 5% of the original value. That left him at $554,000. Now, here is the math that should bother you. To get back to $720,000, Lyle's portfolio doesn't need to grow 18%. It needs to grow 30% because the base shrank. The math of recovery is asymmetric. The deeper the hole, the steeper the climb back. And every dollar you withdraw while the portfolio is down makes the hole deeper. On a $1 million portfolio in Collins' exact allocation, the combined damage from 2022 market losses on both sides plus withdrawals was approximately $179,000. That is the cost of using the same number for two completely different realities. Collins says, stay the course, and during accumulation, that is exactly right. But after retirement, staying the course without protection against sequence risk is like following the map after the terrain has already shifted underneath you. 75-25 while adding money is freedom. 75-25 while withdrawing without protection is exposure. Same number, two completely different financial realities. The book treats them as one, and that brings me to the third seam, the one that made Lyle rewrite his retirement by hand. There's a reason Collins left this out, and when you understand the reason, it changes how you read every page of this book. Fracture 3, the chapter that doesn't exist. Open The Simple Path to Wealth and count the pages dedicated to accumulation, how to save, how to invest, why index funds beat everything, why you should ignore the noise, and stay the course. It is the vast majority of the book, thorough, mathematical, convincing. Now count the pages dedicated to what happens after you retire, how to withdraw, how to protect the portfolio when you're taking money out instead of putting money in, how to survive a market crash when you no longer have a paycheck to bridge the gap. Those pages are thinner, more anecdotal, less mathematical, and three critical tools are completely absent. The first is a cash buffer. 2 to 3 years of living expenses held in cash money market, treasury bills, high-yield savings completely outside the portfolio. This is what you spend during a market downturn instead of selling shares at the bottom. Collins does not mention this. Not once. The second is a bucket strategy. Separating your money into 3 buckets based on time horizon, short-term cash for the next 2 to 3 years, intermediate bonds for years 3 through 7, and long-term equities for everything beyond. This removes sequence risk from your stock allocation because you never need to touch it during a downturn. Collins does not mention this either. The third is dynamic withdrawal, a flexible system where you adjust how much you take based on how the portfolio is performing. Guardrails, rules. If the portfolio drops more than 15%, you reduce withdrawals temporarily. If it rises more than 20%, you can increase slightly. Collins mentions 3 to 4% as a withdrawal rate, but he offers no mechanism for adjustment, no flexibility, no guardrails. And here is a detail that few people notice. The 4% rule, the famous guideline Collins references, was designed by William Bengen in 1994 using portfolios with 50-50 or 60-40 stock-to-bond allocations. Not 75-25, Collins recommends a more aggressive allocation than the very research he cites as his foundation. After that phone call with Jeff, Lyle went back to the book, opened it to the chapter on bonds, the same chapter Jeff had mentioned. He looked for buffer, looked for buckets, looked for any instruction on what to do when both sides of the portfolio fall at the same time. He found nothing. The chapter that connects building wealth to surviving it, the most important chapter for anyone already retired, was never written. So if you're hearing this and recognizing your own portfolio, here's what it looks like when it's actually you. If you have roughly $500,000 invested and you're about 5 years from retirement, you're still in accumulation territory. The map still works. Collins' strategy is still doing what it's supposed to do. Your contributions are still flowing in. Market drops are still discounts. But here's the trap. You think you have time, and technically, you do time to accumulate, but you do not have time to build protection at the last minute. The cash buffer, the bucket structure, the flexible withdrawal plan, these need to be in place before you stop working, not after. If you wait until retirement to build a safety net, you're building it while standing on the edge. Start now. Calculate 2 years of living expenses. Let's say your annual spending is $48,000. That's $96,000 you need to set aside in a high-yield savings account or short-term treasuries before your last day of work. It feels like you're slowing down your accumulation. You are by a small amount, but run the numbers in the other direction. If you retire without a buffer and the market drops 20% in your first year, you sell shares at the bottom to cover expenses. On $500,000, that forced sale costs you roughly $10,000 in permanently lost shares. Shares that would have recovered and compounded for the next 20 years. The $96,000 buffer that felt expensive, it just saved you far more than it cost. The time to build the parachute is before you jump, not on the way down. If you have roughly $750,000 and you just retired, you are Lyle. The engine is built, it runs, but you are driving through new terrain without a map. 75-25 without a cash buffer, without a bucket structure, without a flexible withdrawal rule that is exposure dressed up as discipline. And the math is unforgiving. If the market drops 25% in your first year of retirement and you withdraw 4%, your portfolio doesn't need a 29% recovery. It needs close to 40% because the base shrank from the drop and shrank again from the withdrawal. Two forces pulling in the same direction at the worst possible time. The psychological trap here is powerful. You've read the book. You believe in the system. Collins said, stay the course. And staying the course feels like discipline. But following the map when the terrain has changed is not discipline. It is rigidity. And in retirement, rigidity has a price measured in dollars you cannot earn back. If you have $1 million or more and you've been retired for 3 or more years, you've already lived through 2022. If you didn't panic sell, your portfolio is probably healthy. The recovery has likely put you back near or above where you started. But here's what most people in your position miss. You survived a downturn at 63 or 65. Your body was healthy. Your mind was sharp. You could look at the numbers, absorb the drop, and make rational decisions. You had 25 years of retirement ahead, plenty of time for recovery. Now picture the same 30% drop at 75. Your health is different. Your energy is different. Your ability to cut expenses, to drive less, cook more, cancel trips is limited by a body that may need more care, not less. The emotional weight of watching a portfolio bleed when you know you have 15 years left, not 30, is a different kind of pressure, and the math is colder. A 30% drop at 75 with $40,000 a year in withdrawals leaves a wound that the portfolio may not have enough years to heal. Surviving 2022 does not mean you are protected. Past survival is not future insurance, especially when every year that passes makes the next downturn harder to absorb. In all three scenarios, the map Collins drew got you here. The problem is not the map. The problem is that the terrain ahead is not drawn, and you are the one who has to draw it. If any of these three scenarios sounds like yours, subscribe because the next video builds the missing chapter piece by piece. Now you know where the seams are. Here's what you do about them. Step 1. Calculate your actual withdrawal rate. Not the theoretical one, the real one. Take the total amount you withdrew from your portfolio over the last 12 months and divide it by the portfolio value at the start of those 12 months. If that number is above 4%, you are in the risk zone that Collins' book does not cover. Write it down. Know your number. Step 2. Build the cash buffer before you need it. Set aside 2 to 3 years of living expenses in cash, a money market fund, short-term treasury bills, or a high-yield savings account. This money lives outside your portfolio entirely. It is not invested. It is not allocated. It is what you spend when the market drops instead of selling shares at the bottom. This single step eliminates the most destructive force in retirement investing, forced selling during a downturn. Step 3. Reassess what's inside your 25% bond allocation. VBTLX is not the only bond fund. It is a total bond market fund with intermediate duration, which means it is highly sensitive to interest rate changes. That is exactly what broke it in 2022. Consider short-term bond funds, which have lower duration and therefore less sensitivity to rate hikes. Consider TIPS, Treasury Inflation Protected Securities, which adjust for inflation and provide a layer of protection Collins never mentions. You do not need to abandon bonds. You need to diversify within them. Step 4. Implement a flexible withdrawal rule. Guardrails. Here is how it works. Set a baseline withdrawal, say 4% of your portfolio at retirement. If your portfolio drops more than 15% from its peak, reduce your annual withdrawal by 10% temporarily. If it rises more than 20% above your baseline, you can increase withdrawals by 5%. This is not complicated. It is a simple if-then rule. Write it on an index card and tape it to the inside of the folder where you keep your financial statements. When the market drops, you do not panic, you do not call an advisor, you look at the card and follow the rule. Collins mentions 3 to 4% as a withdrawal rate, but he presents it as a fixed number carved in stone. And a fixed withdrawal from a moving portfolio is how retirees run out of money. Reality demands flexibility. Step 5. Do not abandon Collins, complete him. The philosophy is sound. The core idea, low-cost index funds, long-time horizon, ignore the noise, is as close to a universal truth as personal finance has ever produced. VTSAX remains the right answer for accumulation. The map is excellent for the terrain it covers. Just draw the terrain that's missing. That is not a criticism of the map maker. It is the job he left for you. But here's the question nobody asks. Why did Collins leave this out? Here is what I think happened, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Collins left the withdrawal chapter thin on purpose. It was a deliberate editorial decision, not a gap in his knowledge, not an oversight, a choice. He believes, and he has said this publicly, that complexity is the enemy of execution. The more complicated a financial plan becomes, the less likely anyone is to follow it. And for his original audience, the financial independence community, people in their 30s and 40s with decades ahead of them, he is absolutely right. Simplicity saves those people. Simplicity prevents them from hiring expensive advisors. Simplicity prevents them from trading on emotion. Simplicity prevents them from making the behavioral mistakes that destroy 90% of portfolios. But Lyle is not that reader. Lyle is 63. He does not have decades ahead of him. He has a portfolio that needs to last 25 to 30 years while he draws it down. And for that reader, for you, if you are within 10 years of retirement or already there, the simplicity that eliminates behavioral errors also eliminates the structural protections that prevent mathematical errors. And there is one more thing nobody mentions. Collins himself is in a very different position than most of his readers. He has been investing since the 1980s. His portfolio is significantly larger than the average person following his advice. He has Social Security, he has decades of compounded returns behind him, he has multiple income streams. When his portfolio drops 20%, it hurts on paper. It does not threaten his ability to pay for groceries in March. That is a margin of error most of his readers do not have. Collins can afford to stay the course through anything because his course has a cushion built from 40 years of compounding that no book can replicate. Lyle's margin of error was $720,000, no cash buffer, no secondary income, and no flexible withdrawal system is narrow. Very narrow. One bad sequence of returns in his first 5 years of retirement could permanently impair a portfolio that took him 14 years to build. The book is not wrong. It is incomplete. And the incompleteness is not an accident. It is by design. The problem is that the design was made for a different audience than you. But now you know. You know where the seams are, you know why they're there, and knowing where the map ends is as valuable as the map itself. Collins gave you the best map on the market for the first half of the journey. The second half, the part where the terrain changes, where withdrawals reverse the math, where the shield might fall with the sword he left for you to draw. Now you can draw it. So let me bring Lyle back. After that phone call with Jeff in November of 2022, Lyle did not abandon Collins. He did not sell in panic. He did not call an advisor. He did what he had done his entire life. He researched, he understood the mechanics, and he added what was missing. He separated 2 years of living expenses into a money market fund, moved a portion of his VBTLX into short-term bonds and tips, built a simple guardrail rule: if the portfolio drops more than 15%, cut withdrawals by 10% until it recovers. And he kept the VTSAX every share. The book is still on the shelf behind the television. But now it has 3 sticky notes in the chapter on bonds. 1 for cash buffer, 1 for bucket structure, 1 for flexible withdrawal. 3 things Lyle had to figure out on his own because the book didn't say. The first seam surprised him, the second one worried him, the third one made him rewrite his own retirement by hand. And it worked. Lyle understood something that most readers of Collins never understand. The book teaches you how to build wealth. It does not teach you how to survive it. Tell me, do you follow Collins? What's the one piece you've had to add on your own? Drop it in the comments. I showed you where the seams are. The next video builds the 3 missing tools, the buffer, the buckets, and the guardrails. That's next.